Hi, I'm Bob Scott, Deputy Field Director for Christians United for Israel, and I'm going to be teaching Lesson 14, the Yom Kippur War and its aftermath. There was a six-day war in 1967. We just learned about it in the last lesson. And Jerusalem at this time now was united under Jewish sovereignty for the first time since the Roman conquest of the Holy Land. They also at this time, they gained control of key areas in the region. And during the 67 war, it was actually a humiliating defeat for the Arab armies. And Israel actually fell into a false sense of security. They actually believed that nothing really could happen to them. And in 1973, there was an Egyptian president by the name of Anwar Sadat. And he actually was doing two things at once. One is that he was sending emissaries to the United States, pretending to want peace with Israel. But at the same time, he was holding military exercises on the Egyptian-Israeli border without attacking, but he was holding military exercises. And on Saturday, October 6, 1973, was actually Yom Kippur. And the Jewish people, including the soldiers, were all quietly observing the holiest day of the year. And Israel was attacked on two fronts. And I need you to know these stats. In the south, there were 500 Israeli soldiers that were facing 600,000 Egyptian soldiers. And in the north, there was 180 tanks of Israel that defended against 1,400 tanks from Syria. 6 days later, after this, President Nixon, who was president at the time of the United States, authorized an airlift of weapons to Israel. And Israel, against overwhelming odds, pushed back against the Egyptian and Syrian forces. And 18 days after the first attack, the Arab leaders agreed to a ceasefire. Sadly, 2,688 Israeli soldiers sacrificed their lives to win this Yom Kippur War and to protect their own homeland. A lesson is learned here is that through strength brings peace. And I say that because President Sadat from Egypt decided that because of the strength of Israel, it was better to be their partner than it was to be their enemy. So in 1977, President Sadat actually went against the grain of the Arab countries in the world, and he became the first ever Arab official to officially meet in Israel. Imagine the Egyptian people who have been told throughout all their lives that the nation of Israel is evil, and now your president is visiting a land that you have been taught to hate. Imagine as an Israeli being attacked by a nation, and just a few years later, that president of the nation is now recognizing you and wishing for peace. In 1978, both Sadat and Israeli Prime Minister Begin were in the United States at Camp David, and they met for peace talks with President Jimmy Carter. And in 1979, there was an official Egypt-Israel peace treaty. Egypt regained at that time the Sinai Peninsula, and Israel, what they received is normalized relations with an Arab country. The reason that was important, it was just within a few years of three famous no's that were determined by the Arab people. And it was this: no peace with Israel, no recognition of Israel, and no negotiations with Israel. And so now you have an Arab nation recognizing, making peace, and negotiation with the nation of Israel. Egypt was ostracized by the other Arab countries during this time, really for more than a decade, and they were branded as traitors. Most would say this was very forward-thinking of Sadat, but it was not as much forward-thinking as it was just accepting reality. And the reality was that Israel wasn't going anywhere. In spite of overwhelming odds, they would survive. Sadat, sadly, was assassinated in 1981. But the agreement that he made with Israel at that time has now been maintained for over 40 years.